Marcus
Behold
Chen
the
watched from the
threshold you
corner of
sought
the
to
crystal
claim.
amphitheater
All
as
you
another
found was
would-be
its
noble
teeth.
crumpled to his knees,
Silence.
meant no.
tears streaming down his
Imposters have
purple-scaled face. The Zephyrian prince had lasted exactly 14 minutes in the Dragon Matron's ultimate test before his mind shattered like glass against stone. Around the arena, other failed candidates sat in various states of mental collapse. Some weeping, others staring blankly at nothing, a few rocking back and forth while mumbling incoherently. The Dragon Matron Zathera towered above them all, her massive crimson form coiled around the central platform like a living mountain of scales and fury. Her golden eyes swept across the broken nobles with undisguised contempt. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the chamber with the force of distant thunder. "Pathetic," she rumbled, smoke curling from her nostrils. 10,000 years I have overseen this academy, and still the galaxy sends me weaklings wrapped in fancy titles and empty bloodlines. Her massive head swung toward the trembling survivors. "You call yourselves nobility? You are nothing but decorated cowards, hiding behind your ancestors' achievements." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As the only human in the Galactic Academy of Strategic Excellence, he already stood out like a beacon among the assembled alien aristocracy. His plain brown hair and unremarkable features seemed almost offensive next to the jeweled crests, bioluminescent markings, and exotic appendages of his classmates. The fact that he wasn't technically nobility at all made his presence here even more questionable. He had earned his spot through merit alone, the first human to ever score high enough on the entrance examinations to qualify. Earth's government had nearly bankrupted itself paying the enrollment fees, seeing it as humanity's only chance to gain a foothold in galactic politics. The pressure was immense. If he failed here, it would likely be centuries before another human got this opportunity. The Dragon Matron's gaze fell upon a cluster of Altarian duchesses, their crystalline skin flickering with nervous energy. "You," she pointed one massive claw at the eldest, Duchess Valnara of the Third Spiral. "Your family has ruled for 8 millennia. Surely you can succeed where these others have failed." The Duchess rose gracefully, her head held high despite the obvious fear in her multifaceted eyes. She was beautiful in the alien way of her people, with features that seemed carved from living gemstone and hair that flowed like liquid starlight. Her noble bearing was perfect, her confidence seemingly unshakable. "I am ready, matron," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone born to command fleets and govern star systems. Zethara's expression might have been amusement. It was hard to tell with dragons. "We shall see." Enter the sphere. A translucent energy barrier materialized around the Duchess, isolating her in a column of shimmering light. Marcus had watched this process dozens of times over the past hour, but he still didn't understand exactly what the test entailed. The Academy's instructors had been deliberately vague, saying only that it would reveal the true nature of their character under ultimate pressure. The sphere began to glow brighter, and through its surface, Marcus could see the Duchess's expression change. Her confident mask slipped, replaced first by confusion, then growing horror. Her mouth opened in what might have been a scream, though no sound escaped the barrier. Her perfect posture crumbled as she fell to her knees, then to her side, curling into a fetal position. 7 minutes. She had lasted 7 minutes. When the sphere dissolved, the Duchess lay motionless, except for shallow, rapid breathing. Her crystalline skin had turned a sickly gray color, and her starlight hair had dimmed to barely a flicker. 2 medical drones immediately swooped down to carry her away. Zethara's laugh was like the sound of an avalanche. The mighty Altarian nobility, reduced to a whimpering child. How the galaxy has fallen. She gestured dismissively toward the Academy's exit with one wing. "Begone. All of you. Return to your palaces and your empty titles. You are not worthy to lead armies or govern worlds." One by one, the failed nobles began to shuffle toward the exit, their heads bowed in shame. Some had to be helped by friends or servants, still too shaken to walk on their own. The lucky ones who hadn't been tested yet seemed relieved to escape before facing the sphere themselves. Marcus remained in his seat, unsure whether he should leave with the others or wait to be dismissed. Technically, he hadn't been called forward yet, but given the complete failure rate, it seemed unlikely the testing would continue. The Dragon Matron's attention suddenly fixed on him with laser intensity. Her massive head swung around until her golden eyes were staring directly into his brown ones. The temperature in the amphitheater seemed to drop several degrees. "And what have we here?" she mused, her voice taking on a dangerously curious tone. "A human? How? Unexpected. I was not aware that Earth had any nobility worth testing." Marcus stood slowly, trying to project more confidence than he felt. "I'm not nobility, matron. I earned my place here through examination scores." A ripple of shocked whispers ran through the remaining spectators. The concept of non-nobles attending the academy was apparently scandalous. Several alien aristocrats turned to stare at him with expressions ranging from outrage to confusion. Zithara's eyes narrowed to golden slits. "A commoner? In my academy?" Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "How dare you presume to stand among your betters, little human? Your species has barely learned to crawl between the stars. And you think yourself fit to command?" The remaining nobles seemed to perk up at this turn of events. Marcus could feel their satisfaction. Finally, someone lower than them to look down upon. Their own failures seemed less shameful when compared to the audacity of a mere human thinking he belonged here. "I don't think myself better than anyone," Marcus said carefully. "I'm here to learn, same as everyone else." "Learn?" Zethara's laugh was cold as space. "You want to learn? Very well, human. Let me teach you exactly where your kind stands in the galactic order." She gestured toward the testing sphere. "Step forward. Show us all what human excellence truly amounts to." Marcus hesitated. Every instinct told him to flee, to join the other failures in their shameful retreat. The sphere had broken every noble who entered it, beings from species with millennia of genetic refinement and selective breeding for leadership qualities. What chance did a human have against something that had destroyed the best the galaxy had to offer? But running would mean the end of humanity's hopes for galactic recognition. Earth had invested everything in this moment. Not just money, but their entire future, standing among the stars. If he fled now, humans would be dismissed as cowards for generations to come. He walked forward toward the sphere. The Dragon Matron watched his approach with obvious anticipation, like a cat preparing to toy with a mouse. "Tell me, human," she said as the energy barrier began to form around him. "What makes you think your soft little species deserves a place among the stars? You have no claws, no natural armor, no psychic abilities. You're not even particularly intelligent compared to the Altarians or long-lived like the Zephyrians. What possible advantage could you possess?" Marcus felt the sphere solidify around him, cutting off sound from the outside world. Through the translucent walls, he could see Zethara's massive form and the gathered crowd of spectators, all waiting for his inevitable breakdown. The energy field began to intensify, and he felt something pressing against the edges of his consciousness. Something vast and alien and utterly merciless. The test had begun. At first, it felt like standing at the edge of an infinite abyss. The sensation was purely psychological, but no less terrifying for that. Marcus found himself facing a void so deep and empty that looking into it made his soul ache. It wasn't death he was seeing. Death would have been a mercy. This was something worse. The complete absence of meaning, purpose, or hope. Then the visions started. He saw Earth burning, consumed by nuclear fire, as humanity tore itself apart in one final, pointless war. He watched his family die, his friends suffer. Everyone he had ever cared about reduced to ash and memory. The sphere forced him to experience each death in excruciating detail, to feel their pain as if it were his own. But that was only the beginning. The test moved beyond personal loss to existential horror. He saw the universe itself dying, stars growing cold and dark, galaxies drifting apart until nothing remained but empty space and silence. He felt the weight of cosmic meaninglessness, the crushing knowledge that everything he or anyone else might accomplish would eventually be forgotten, erased by time and entropy. The sphere whispered to him in voices that bypassed his ears and spoke directly to his mind. "You are nothing. Your species is nothing. Your entire civilization will be dust in a cosmic instant. Why struggle? Why fight? Why not simply stop? Marcus felt his knees buckle. The psychological pressure was enormous, like trying to hold up a mountain with his bare hands. Around him, he could sense the echoes of all the other minds that had broken in this place. Thousands of nobles over the centuries, all of them stronger and more refined than him, all of them ultimately crushed by the same inexorable weight. The test wasn't measuring intelligence or courage or tactical ability. It was measuring something deeper. The fundamental will to continue existing in the face of absolute despair. It was asking the question that lurked in the heart of every thinking being. In a universe that doesn't care about you, why keep trying? For the nobles, this question had proven unanswerable. Raised in luxury and comfort, taught from birth that they were special and important, they had never truly confronted the possibility that their existence might be meaningless. When faced with that revelation, their sense of self had simply collapsed. But Marcus was human. And humans had been asking themselves this question for millennia. He thought about his ancestors, the ones who had climbed down from the trees and walked upright across the African savanna, despite being slower and weaker than the predators hunting them. He thought about the first humans to cross the frozen land bridges into unknown continents, driven by nothing but curiosity and stubbornness. He thought about every person throughout history who had looked into the abyss of meaninglessness and responded not with despair, but with defiance. "You're right," he said to the voices in his head. "Nothing I do matters in the cosmic sense. The universe doesn't care about me or my species or anything else. But you know what? I don't care what the universe thinks." The pressure intensified, trying to crush his resolve, but Marcus pushed back. Not with noble bloodlines or genetic advantages or psychic powers, just with pure human stubbornness. "You want to know what makes humans special?" he continued, his voice growing stronger. "It's not that we're the smartest, or the strongest, or the most advanced. It's that we're the only species crazy enough to look at a vast, uncaring universe and say, so what? We don't need cosmic meaning to give our lives value. We make our own meaning." The sphere showed him more horrors, diseases that would ravage worlds, wars that would consume civilizations, the heat death of the universe itself. But Marcus met each vision with the same response. "So what? We'll deal with it when we get there." He thought about every human who had ever faced impossible odds and kept fighting anyway. Every scientist who spent their life pursuing knowledge that wouldn't pay off for generations. Every parent who sacrificed for children they'd never see grow old. Every person who chose kindness in a world that often rewarded cruelty. "That's what you don't understand," he told the test. "You think showing us meaninglessness will break us. But humans figured out meaninglessness a long time ago. We just decided to ignore it and keep going anyway." The voices grew louder, more insistent. "You will die. Your species will die. Everything you build will crumble." "Yes," Marcus agreed cheerfully. "And we'll build it anyway. Because that's what humans do. We're not fighting for cosmic significance or immortal legacy. We're fighting because fighting is better than giving up. We're stubborn that way." Around him, the sphere began to flicker. The test was designed to break minds that depended on external validation or cosmic purpose. But it had no defense against a mind that had already accepted meaninglessness and chosen to act anyway. Marcus stood up straight, his fear replaced by something else. Not confidence, exactly, but a kind of resigned determination that was uniquely human. "Is that all you've got?" he asked the sphere. "Because if so, I think we're done here." The energy field collapsed around him like a soap bubble. The amphitheater fell into complete silence. Marcus stood in the center of the platform, blinking in the normal lighting after the intensity of the sphere, completely unaware of the historical magnitude of what had just happened. He brushed off his uniform and looked around at the sea of shocked faces staring back at him. Dragon Matron Zithara's massive form had gone completely still. Her golden eyes were fixed on Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. Surprise? Disbelief? For the first time since the testing began, She seemed at a loss for words. The silence stretched on until one of the remaining Altarian nobles whispered, "Impossible. The sphere must have malfunctioned." This seemed to snap Githara out of her trance. Her head whipped around toward the speaker with frightening speed. "Malfunctioned?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. "Are you suggesting that my testing apparatus, perfected over 10 millennia, would suddenly fail for the convenience of a human?" The noble shrank back, his crystalline skin flickering with fear. No, matron. I merely thought." "You thought nothing," Zethara cut him off, "which is precisely why you would fail the test as surely as your predecessors." She turned back to Marcus, studying him like a fascinating new specimen. "How long were you in the sphere?" "Human?" Marcus checked his chronometer. "About 37 minutes, I think." Another wave of shocked murmurs ran through the audience. Duchess Valnara, the Altarian, who had lasted longest before Marcus, had managed only 7 minutes. The idea that someone had endured the test for over half an hour was beyond their comprehension. Zethara's expression slowly shifted into what might have been amusement. 37 minutes. In 10,000 years of testing, the previous record was held by Emperor Thexgan of the Void Lords, who managed 14 minutes before his mind shattered. And he was considered the strongest-willed leader in galactic history. She began to circle the platform, her massive form moving with surprising grace. "Tell me, Marcus Chen, of Earth, what did you see in the sphere? What horrors did it show you?" Marcus considered how to answer. The visions had been intensely personal, but something in the Dragon Matron's tone suggested this was important. "It showed me everything ending, my family dying, Earth burning, the universe going cold and empty. It tried to convince me that nothing mattered because everything ends eventually." "And how did that make you feel?" "Sad," Marcus admitted, "but not surprised. I mean, of course everything ends. That's just physics. Heat death is inevitable. Given enough time." The remaining nobles looked horrified at his casual acceptance of cosmic doom. One of the Zephyrian princes spoke up. "How can you be so calm about the meaninglessness of existence?" Marcus turned to him with genuine puzzlement. "Who said it was meaningless? Just because something ends doesn't mean it didn't matter while it was happening." Zethara's laugh was different this time, not mocking, but genuinely amused. "Explain this reasoning, human. How can temporary things have permanent value?" "Well," Marcus said, warming to the topic, "take music. A song only lasts a few minutes. Then it's over. But that doesn't make the song meaningless while you're listening to it. The fact that it ends is part of what makes it beautiful." He gestured toward the assembled nobles. "All of your civilizations will fall eventually. All the stars will burn out. But right now, at this moment, there are beings creating art, and falling in love, and discovering new truths about the universe. The fact that it won't last forever doesn't diminish its value. It makes it more precious." A young Centaurian duke spoke up, his voice uncertain. "But if our achievements don't echo through eternity, what's the point of striving for greatness?" "The point is the striving itself," Marcus replied. "You don't climb a mountain because it will make you immortal. You climb it because climbing is worthwhile. The summit is just a bonus." Zethara had stopped circling and was now watching him with intense focus. "This philosophy you describe, is it common among your species?" "Pretty common, yeah. I mean, humans have been dealing with existential dread for thousands of years. Every human religion and philosophy has had to grapple with mortality and meaninglessness at some point. We've gotten good at it." The Dragon Matron was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had taken on a different quality. Less imperious, more thoughtful. "In my 10 millennia of existence, I have tested the finest minds the galaxy has produced. Beings bred for leadership, enhanced through genetic manipulation, trained from birth to rule, and every single one has broken when confronted with the fundamental uncertainty of existence." She gestured toward the exit where the failed nobles had retreated. "They were taught that they were special, that their bloodlines made them inherently superior, that their destinies were written in the stars. When shown that the universe is indifferent to their existence, they could not cope. But humans, she continued, humans are different. You are not bred for leadership. You have no genetic modifications, no psychic abilities, no natural advantages, yet you possess something all the others lack. The ability to find meaning in meaninglessness, to create purpose where none exists. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. I wouldn't say I'm special. Any human could have passed that test. We're just used to things not making sense. Used to it? Zithara's eyes gleamed. Tell me more about this. Marcus thought about how to explain human history to a dragon. Well, for most of our existence, we didn't know why things happened. Why crops failed. Why people got sick. Why earthquakes struck. We had to learn to keep going even when the world seemed random and hostile. Most species develop explanatory frameworks to cope with uncertainty. The Dragon Matron observed. They create religions or philosophies that provide cosmic meaning. Oh, we did that too, Marcus said. Lots of them, actually. But we also developed something else. The ability to act without certainty. Humans are really good at saying, I don't know why this matters, but I'm going to do it anyway, because it feels right. One of the Altarian nobles spoke up. That sounds terribly inefficient. How can you make rational decisions without clear logical frameworks? Marcus grinned. Who said anything about rational? Humans aren't particularly rational. We do things because we love people, or because something is beautiful, or just because we're stubborn. Logic is great for engineering problems, but it's not so useful for deciding whether life is worth living. Zithara leaned forward, her massive head coming closer to Marcus's eye level. And this irrationality, you see it as a strength? I see it as human, Marcus replied. We're emotional creatures who happen to be smart enough to use tools. That's a weird combination. And it makes us do weird things. Like spending our entire planetary budget to send one guy to an academy where he'll probably fail, just because we want to prove we belong among the stars. The Dragon Matron was silent for several minutes, her ancient mind clearly processing something significant. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight of revelation. I understand now why the sphere could not break you. The test is designed to shatter minds that depend on external validation or cosmic purpose. But you come from a species that learned long ago to create its own validation, its own purpose. She straightened to her full height, her presence somehow less intimidating and more respectful. The galaxy has made a grave error in dismissing humanity. We looked at your short lifespans, your lack of natural advantages, your technological inferiority, and assumed you were weak, but we failed to recognize your greatest strength. Which is? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Resilience, Zithara said simply. True resilience. Not the ability to endure hardship while waiting for rescue or meaning or cosmic justice. The ability to endure hardship simply because enduring is better than not enduring. The ability to hope without reason, to fight without guarantee of victory, to love despite the certainty of loss. She turned to address the remaining nobles, who had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement. You have witnessed something unprecedented today. This human has not merely passed the ultimate test. He has revealed its fundamental nature. The test does not measure strength, or intelligence, or noble breeding. It measures the will to continue existing in an indifferent universe. The Dragon Matron's gaze swept across the amphitheater. I hereby declare this human, Marcus Chen of Earth, to be the first graduate of the Academy's command track in over 3 centuries. He has demonstrated the essential quality needed to lead in times of true crisis. The ability to act with purpose, even when that purpose is self-created. Marcus felt a surge of relief so strong it almost knocked him over. He had done it. Against all odds, he had succeeded where everyone else had failed. But more importantly, he had opened a door for humanity. This success would ripple outward, changing how the galaxy viewed his species. But even as the reality of his achievement sank in, Marcus noticed something troubling. The nobles who remained were looking at him with a mixture of awe and fear. He had become something alien to them. Not just successful, but successful in a way they couldn't understand or replicate. That realization would prove more significant than anyone in the amphitheater could have imagined. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the Academy's Strategic Command Center, watching holographic displays show the disposition of fleets across a dozen star systems. The war had begun exactly as the Dragon Matron had predicted it would. Suddenly, brutally, and with the complete collapse of established galactic order. The Hegemony Wars, as historians would later call them, started when the Void Lords launched a simultaneous assault on 17 core worlds. Their logic was simple. The traditional ruling classes had proven themselves fundamentally weak. If noble bloodlines couldn't handle a simple psychological test, how could they be trusted to defend the galaxy against real threats? What the Void Lords hadn't anticipated was that their attack would trigger exactly the kind of existential crisis the Academy's test was designed to measure. Across the galaxy, established governments crumbled as their noble leaders faced the reality of genuine mortal peril for the first time in their pampered lives. Marcus had watched it happen through the Academy's intelligence networks. Entire star systems surrendering without a fight when their hereditary rulers fled at the first sign of danger. Fleets abandoning their posts when their noble commanders suffered nervous breakdowns. The very foundation of galactic civilization, the assumption that bloodline conferred leadership ability, had proved catastrophically false. The Altarian Third Fleet has just broken formation, reported Lieutenant Kira Voss, one of the few nobles who had chosen to stay at the Academy after the test results. She was a minor daughter of a Centaurian trading house, possessing neither the arrogance nor the fragility of her higher-born peers. Their admiral is requesting permission to retreat to the Inner Rim. Marcus studied the tactical display. The Third Fleet was positioned to protect the Altarian homeworld, but their retreat would leave 3 billion civilians defenseless. What's their reason? The Void Lord fleet is 20% larger than expected, Kira replied, her voice carefully neutral. Admiral Thexnos believes discretion is the better part of valor. In other words, Marcus thought, the admiral was scared and looking for any excuse to run. It was the same story playing out across the galaxy. When faced with real danger rather than theoretical scenarios, the Noble Officer Corps was revealing its true nature. Dragon Matron Zethara materialized beside him in a shimmer of holographic light. Her physical form was currently deployed with the Academy's defense fleet, but her consciousness could inhabit multiple locations simultaneously through quantum entanglement networks. The situation deteriorates by the hour, she said grimly. The Zephyrian Crown Prince just surrendered the entire outer spiral without consulting his parliament. He claims it's a tactical withdrawal to preserve lives. But intelligence suggests he's already negotiating personal safety guarantees with the Void Lords. Marcus felt a familiar knot of frustration in his stomach. 3 months ago, these same nobles had looked down on him as an inferior being. Now, when their own cowardice was exposed, they expected him to somehow fix the crisis they had created through their weakness. What about non-noble officers? He asked. Surely some of the military leadership comes from merit-based appointments. Zethara's expression darkened. Unfortunately, the galactic military system has been designed around noble prerogatives for millennia. Non-nobles can rise to tactical positions, but strategic command has always been reserved for those with proper breeding. The result is a command structure where competent officers are blocked from decision-making roles by incompetent aristocrats. The tactical display updated with new information. The Void Lord advance had accelerated, taking advantage of the chaos in the defender ranks. Entire sectors were falling without resistance as local governors fled or surrendered. Matron, Kira spoke up hesitantly. There are reports that some non-noble officers are beginning to ignore orders from their appointed commanders. The 3rd Stellar Marines refused to retreat from the Proxima system when their Duke ordered withdrawal. Mutiny, Zethara observed with what might have been satisfaction. The command structure is finally beginning to reflect reality rather than tradition. Marcus watched the displays with growing alarm. Individual acts of competence weren't enough to stop a coordinated assault. The galaxy needed real leadership, the kind that could make hard decisions under pressure and inspire others to follow, even in desperate circumstances. "Matron," he said slowly, "what would happen if someone issued fleet-wide commands without official authority? Say, using Academy emergency protocols?" Thara's golden eyes focused on him with laser intensity. "That would be treason against the established government. The penalty would be death or life imprisonment, assuming the Void Lords don't conquer everything first. But would it work? Could Academy authority override noble incompetence?" The Dragon Matron was quiet for a long moment. The Academy of Strategic Excellence was created by ancient treaty as a neutral institution. In times of galaxy-wide crisis, it theoretically has authority to coordinate defense efforts. That authority has never been invoked because it would require someone willing to take personal responsibility for billions of lives. Marcus studied the tactical situation one more time. The math was clear. At the current rate of noble surrender and retreat, the Void Lords would control 70% of galactic civilization within 6 months. Traditional leadership had not just failed, it had actively sabotaged the defense effort through cowardice and incompetence. "I'll do it," he said quietly. Kira turned to stare at him. "Marcus, you can't be serious. You'd be declaring yourself supreme military commander of the entire galaxy." "Treason," Marcus finished. "Yes, I know, but someone has to." He walked to the central command console and began entering his Academy authorization codes. "Matron, I'm invoking emergency protocol 7. Under the Treaty of Stellar Defense. As the only Academy graduate certified for strategic command in the past 3 centuries, I'm assuming temporary authority over all galactic defense forces." The command center's computers chimed acceptance of his codes. Across the galaxy, the Academy's quantum communication network began broadcasting new orders to every military unit simultaneously. The message was simple. Ignore all retreat orders from noble commanders. Hold your positions and prepare for coordinated counterattack. Gaethara watched this development with something approaching awe. "You do realize," she said softly, "that you have just made yourself the most wanted criminal in galactic history? Every noble house will place a bounty on your head for this insult to their authority." "Good," Marcus replied, already deep in tactical calculations. "If they're that angry about losing their command privileges, maybe they'll finally grow some backbone and fight to get them back." The first responses began coming in within minutes. To Marcus's surprise, they weren't condemnations or refusals to obey. Instead, ship after ship reported acknowledgement of the new command structure. Non-noble officers who had been watching their superiors flee in terror suddenly had permission to do their jobs. "The 3rd Stellar Marines are reporting successful defense of Proxima," Kira announced, her voice filled with amazement. "They're requesting permission to begin offensive operations against Void Lord supply lines." "Granted," Marcus said, studying fleet positions. "Have them coordinate with the 5th Assault Wing. I want those supply lines cut within the hour." More reports flooded in. The Altarian Third Fleet, after their admiral suffered what was diplomatically described as a stress-related medical emergency, had suddenly discovered reserves of courage under their human-appointed deputy commander. The Zephyrian Crown Prince's surrender was being ignored by his own military, who declared loyalty to the Academy rather than their coward sovereign. "This is remarkable," Zethara observed. "The non-noble officer corps has been waiting for someone to give them permission to actually fight. Your species' reputation for competence is already beginning to influence their behavior." Marcus barely heard her. He was deep in the kind of complex strategic thinking that humans excelled at, not because they were smarter than other species, but because they were comfortable making decisions with incomplete information. Where alien nobles demanded certainty before acting, humans were willing to commit to a course of action and adapt as circumstances changed. "Kira, I need you to coordinate intelligence reports from all sectors," he said without looking up from his displays. "I want to know where every Void Lord fleet is positioned within the next 2 hours." "That's impossible," she protested. "The intelligence networks have been disrupted by the retreat of noble commanders. Then we'll rebuild them. Contact every Academy graduate in the past century." I don't care what they're doing now. We need them. Use emergency authority to commandeer civilian ships if necessary. And get me a direct line to Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Kira's eyes widened. Admiral Chen? But Earth only has a handful of ships. What could they possibly contribute? Marcus smiled grimly. Admiral Chen is my grandmother. And Earth's ships might be small, but they're commanded by people who've never expected the universe to make sense. Trust me, we'll need that perspective. Over the following weeks, the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented. Effective military leadership. Under Marcus's coordination, the defense effort transformed from a series of panicked retreats into a coherent strategy. Human tactical doctrines, emphasizing adaptability, initiative, and acceptance of calculated risks, began spreading throughout the galactic military. The Void Lords, who had expected an easy conquest of a decadent civilization, suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow established patterns. Fleet engagements that should have resulted in easy victories turned into grinding battles of attrition. Supply lines that should have been secure came under constant harassment from units that improvised tactics on the fly. The enemy is adapting faster than our models predicted, reported one captured Void Lord officer during interrogation. Their response patterns don't match any known military doctrine. They seem to make decisions without proper deliberation protocols. What the Void Lords couldn't understand was that they were fighting humans now, not physically, since humans made up less than 1% of galactic military forces, but philosophically. The human approach to warfare, pragmatic, flexible, willing to sacrifice abstract principles for concrete results, was spreading through the command structure like a virus. Marcus found himself working 18-hour days, coordinating campaigns across dozens of star systems, while fielding increasingly desperate communications from various noble houses, demanding his immediate surrender to their authority. He ignored them all. The war was too important for political considerations. Marcus, Kira said during one of their brief rest periods, what happens when this is over? Assuming we win, the noble houses will never forgive you for usurping their authority. They'll spend generations trying to kill you. Marcus looked up from the tactical reports he'd been studying. The question had occurred to him, but he'd deliberately avoided thinking about it. Personal survival seemed less important than galactic survival. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe they'll execute me as a traitor. Maybe they'll exile humanity from galactic civilization. Maybe they'll try to pretend this never happened and go back to the old system. And you're okay with that? Marcus considered the question seriously. The nobles were never going to accept humanity as equals anyway. We were always going to be second-class citizens in their system. But now, at least, we've proven that human thinking has value. Other species will remember that when the crisis came, it was human philosophy that saved them. He gestured toward the tactical displays, showing successful defensive operations across the galaxy. This isn't just a military victory. It's proof that competence matters more than breeding, that merit should determine authority, that leadership isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn through action. Dragon Matron Zathara, who had been listening to this exchange, spoke up. You speak as if this were merely an academic exercise. But you have fundamentally altered the course of galactic civilization. The old order cannot survive what you have demonstrated. She was right, Marcus realized. Win or lose, the hegemony wars had changed everything. The galaxy had seen what happened when real leaders, regardless of their bloodline, were given authority to act. They had witnessed the contrast between noble cowardice and human determination. There would be no going back to the old assumptions about natural superiority and inherited authority. The final battle came 6 months later, at the Nexus Point, a strategically vital system that controlled hyperspace routes to the core worlds. The Void Lords had assembled their entire remaining fleet for one decisive engagement, confident that superior numbers would overcome the tactical innovations their enemies had displayed. They were wrong. Marcus watched from the Academy Command Center as human-trained officers executed a battle plan that would have been impossible under the old command structure. Ships broke formation without asking permission, adapted to changing circumstances without waiting for orders, and coordinated through improvised communication networks that bypassed traditional hierarchies. When the Void Lord flagship finally exploded, ending their threat to galactic civilization, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. They had won the war, but the victory raised uncomfortable questions about everything the galaxy had believed about leadership and authority. Dragon Matron Zathara's voice cut through his thoughts. "Congratulations, Supreme Commander. You have achieved something remarkable. Not just military victory, but a fundamental transformation of galactic political structure." Marcus looked around the command center at the diverse group of beings who had made this victory possible. Nobles and commoners working together, following orders based on competence rather than birthright. United by shared purpose rather than social hierarchy. "I was never Supreme Commander," he said quietly. "I was just someone willing to make hard decisions when the people who were supposed to make them couldn't handle the pressure." "Yes," Zathara agreed. "And that, perhaps, is the most human thing of all." Outside the command center windows, Marcus could see ships from dozens of different species returning to their home systems, carrying with them the knowledge that leadership wasn't about noble blood or ancient privileges. It was about the willingness to stand up when standing up was needed, to make choices when choices were hard, and to accept responsibility when responsibility was terrifying. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time since arriving at the academy, Marcus Chen allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the universe needed.